Wave, little gun locks. Wave. There you go. All right. Welcome back to Internet News, Cam and Company. Every day is Take Your Child to Work Day when we have guests with children. And it's not just rumor, Julie Gunlock. You really are a real mom. You didn't just rent those kids.
I am.
Just found them outside. Come on up.
The only reason I brought them was so you guys would have more sympathy.
It is good to see you in studio today. Julie Gunlock with the Independent Women's Forum is here.
And it's nice to be here. See you in the flesh.
Yeah, and so we've got a lot to talk about. I want to talk about the Women Lead event, which is coming up here.
Yep, June 2nd. Yep, on Thursday.
I got to put that on my calendar.
Do.
You know,
you're
really.
kind of the star of the show there.
I am not the star of the show.
We are Yes, we're very excited to have you.
I am very.
Everybody wants to be on my panel.
I am very excited that I get to be on this panel, moderate this panel that you're going to be on, talking about the culture of alarmism.
Yep.
But this is one panel of many that'll be taking place throughout the day on June the 2nd. Where can folks find out more information if they want to
go to
attend this
iwf.org. At the top of the page, there's an events tab. Click on that. All the information is there, and you can RSVP. And anyone is you're all invited. Tickets are free. We're going to be talking about women in politics, women in the workforce. We're even going to have a panel on the future of the Supreme Court. So it's going to be obviously our panel is going to be the most interesting. Obviously.
Will you introduce me as a gunsplainer?
I will. And a mansplainer.
Yes, thank you. All right. So Deborah Saunders, I don't know if you read Deborah much. She's in the San Francisco Chronicle.
Yeah, sure.
One of the very few conservatives, or even right of center individuals.
She writes from a hidden location.
She does, right? Exactly. I'm still kind of shocked the San Francisco Chronicle publishes her, but she's got a piece at Real Clear Politics. Came out Sunday. The Many Ages of Adulthood in the Nanny State, and I thought this was really interesting. So she says the San Francisco Board of Supervisors is flirting with the idea of letting 16 and 17-year-olds vote in local elections. She says this idea was floated last year, but didn't go in a year. But this is an election year, and in an election year, she says, noxious proposals carry extra currency. So expect City Hall to pass the measure and put it on the ballot. Now, she says, of course, the city's progressive wing wants high school kids to vote. They want to lure young people into the tent before they start working for a living and paying taxes.
Right.
But, on the other hand, Julie, we keep hearing from people that not only are 16 and 17-year-olds not mature enough to handle adult responsibilities, whether that's a part-time job, right? We're told 24-year-olds aren't responsible enough to handle the responsibilities that come with legally owning a firearm. We're told that, 25-year-olds need to be able to stay on their parents' insurance because, they're still making their way in the world. There is now like this decade-long age where you sort of transition and out of adulthood.
Liberals only think 16, 17-year-olds are mature enough to have sex, have an abortion, and now apparently vote. I mean, there are certain things that they're perfectly fine with 16s and 17-year-olds doing. But when it comes to, making normal decisions that you read all these historical books, you kind of get a sense of what 16, especially farm kids that grew up on farms, what they were doing. But yeah, no, they're a little bit, the cognitive dissonance here is pretty clear.
It's also, it's interesting because California just raised their smoking age of tobacco. I don't know what it is for medical marijuana, but it's 21 now to buy tobacco.
Right.
So wait a second. Where is the consistency? Where is the logic here?
Right.
Or should we just not even look for it?
We shouldn't even look for it. It is San Francisco.
This is an election year.
California. I mean, first of all,
it's just as basic as that, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's really, it's not logical. They don't. That doesn't matter in California. Logic and consistency and those sorts of things.
Deborah Saunders said the guy who proposed this last year, John Avalos, who's a supervisor there in San Francisco, she interviewed him, and she asked whether he believed that 16 and 17-year-olds should be able to buy cigarettes, and he said, obviously, no.
No.
Right.
Right.
Giving a teenager the right to vote, he added, is, quote, very different from saying that someone is an adult.
Really?
That was...
Yeah, see, don't look for the logic in this. Don't look for the logic. Yes, but they know that this will serve them. I mean, this is, any way that they can expand their voting base, they're going to do that. And I think they can rely on 16 and 17-year-olds being attracted to the idea, sort of the Bernie line of everything's free, 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 free. And again, you mentioned, these guys they're not paying taxes. They're living in their parents' house. Their mom is still doing their laundry and, cooking for them. Hear that, kids? So, I mean, why not expand it to 9-year-olds,
5, right? Well, actually, so I can't remember what European country this was, but a few years ago, the idea was floated that basically you as a parent would be able to cast a proxy vote for your kids. So they wouldn't be able to vote until I think age 16 or so.
Yeah.
But as soon as they were born, you could cast a vote on their behalf. Now, Deborah Saunders also said last Thursday, Kamala Harris, who's the Attorney General of California, went to the Chronicle's editorial board to ask for the paper's endorsement in the race to replace Senator Barbara Boxer. Deborah Saunders writes, after the state's top law enforcer discussed how the brain's judgment faculties begin to develop at age 18. Begin, right? I asked her about voting at 16. Deborah Saunders says Harris, a Democrat, of course, had just said that children's brains haven't developed judgment yet, and still she answered that she liked the idea of letting minors vote. Right? So and again, there's no, it just flies right over. Now, look, here's the thing. I happen to believe that.
No wonder liberals love this potential voting block. They haven't,
right?
they haven't developed judgment and reason and all. It sounds like a liberal to me. So
now, look, there are. Obviously, it's not that when you turn 18, you become immediately a responsible adult. We all know, adolescents, even, kids who aren't even teenagers yet,
Right.
who just kind of blow you away by their responsibility and their maturity, right? We all know this. But it's sort of an individual thing.
it is.
Right?
It is. It is. And again, this is, I write about this. I write about parenting and I write about, sort of how we should let parents decide these things. And this is a perfect example. Certain kids are going to be ready for more adult responsibilities and certain kids aren't. And so again, making these sort of one size fits all policies, all kids are going to, look, we're going to have a huge amount of voter apathy in this group of, if they do indeed let 16, 17-year-olds vote. Many of them will not show up to the polls, right? There'll be many, many other interesting things to do. But again, some kids will take advantage of this and some won't. But I think, again, this is just a way to expand sort of the liberal base.
I think I worry about the 16 and 17-year-old voters electing, what would that be, McPresident face, or something like that. Just, D's nuts would be polling at like 35%. Right. If 16-year-olds,
yes,
especially 16-year-old boys across the country could cast their vote, right?
Yes.
I'm a little concerned about that aspect of it.
Yes, you should be.
But what is just so fascinating?
I don't know. Maybe Trump would be. They might have that might boost Trump's numbers. He's very popular with young kids with his reality TV shows. So
he
who
is.
knows?
He is. Listen, we talked with Bethany Bora. I think you know Bethany. Mm-hmm. And, she's there at Florida Atlantic University. Actually, summer vacation, I think, has started now. But back in the spring, she was saying that, on campus, Bernie Sanders was the number one choice of the students that she could tell, closely followed by Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
And so I think that there is something to that idea. But, this just the sheer just naked display of what this is all about.
Yeah, exactly.
Where it's yes. 18-year-olds aren't smart enough to make and they're not, they're not reasoned enough to make their own decisions in X, Y, Z, but give them a ballot.
Yeah, they can serve in the military, right? They can serve in the military, but they can't buy a pack of cigarettes. We see this kind, we see this kind of stuff in other areas, and liberals will decide, you're smart enough to do this, but you're too dumb to do this, but you're definitely smart enough to vote for us. So. Not a lot of consistency.
I'm actually, and by the way, I'm actually in favor of giving adolescents more responsibility because I think that they can handle it.
Yes.
I think we're kind of going in that wrong direction where we're pushing adulthood back.
Yeah.
Eventually, maybe by the time your kids grow up, Julie, I've got a theory that adulthood will be defined the day you start your midlife crisis. That's the day that you become an adult. And so adolescence will be extended out until your midlife crisis. Then you get your midlife crisis and then you hit retirement.
Right. Sounds good to me.
And you never have to grow up.
And then you die.
Right?
Yep.
And then you die. So our friend Lenore Skenazy at Free Range Kids has a piece as well. She was at the U.S. Play coalition conference at Clemson University last month. That sentence alone just boggles my mind. There's a play coalition conference here. And they were talking about this video that I think you and I had talked about. It's the campaign, the detergent campaign, talking about inmates spending more time outside than kids, right? She says, as we got to talking with this fellow Kent Callison from the playground manufacturing company Game Time, he showed her another video, one of his 2 daughters on a day at school celebrating the fact it's okay to be different. And this was one of his daughters has Down syndrome. And so these were, 2 sisters that were getting up there talking about this. This was a really interesting piece because it's so different from what Lenore typically writes about. Yeah. And I wanted to highlight it because, a lot of times I think one of the cheap criticism of the free range parenting movement is, well, you don't really care about your kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, you just, whatever, they're just disposable, whatever. And so to
or you're
highlight,
lazy.
Right, or you're lazy. And to show, again, that, no, you can be a parent and you can want your kids to develop that independence. And it doesn't mean you don't love them.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're not even afraid for them at times when they're exploring the world, right?
It's very hard to be a free-range parent. It's very hard. I've let my son, and if he's listening right now, I'm not sure he is.
I believe he's too busy destroying some of the equipment there in the control room.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be on fire. It's okay.
I've let him ride his bike by himself to the.
There you go. Wave on the man.
They heard me. Hello. I let them ride their bikes, the 2 older ones, by themselves. And man, it is difficult for me to watch them ride away. But I know that it's important that they learn about their neighborhood. They get familiar with it so, that they can find their house. I mean, there are certain things, there's value to this, but it's very hard for me. When I wrote that article about leaving him in the car, I got called lazy and a terrible mother. And gosh, the comments were not nice. I was as much, and I'll admit it. I mean, it's nice to go in a store if I'm in there for 10 minutes by myself, but also they were exhausted. And, look, I will end up yelling at them, right? Because it's frustrating to take 3 little kids in a store. So I also make those decisions for them. I think it's better. But yeah, it's really tough. And I'm glad she wrote that. I think that people that sort of follow the free range kids movement often are greatly misunderstood.
I agree with that. But I think I think what you just described is sort of that fundamental misunderstanding. Because as parents, again, as you described, you want to protect your kids, you want to nurture your kids, but there comes that point when, as a parent, you have to let go.
Yeah.
Right. And as actually, I take that back. There's not even a point. There are a million points as a parent. A million different times where you have to step back and let go. And let kids, make mistakes, whether it's, the first time they go down the slide by themselves or the first time they get behind the wheel of a car and you're not in the car with them.
But also, I mean, I hold my kids back. I mean, even coming into the studio, my oldest son was running ahead of me and I got so mad at him because he was running so far ahead of me and there's cars around. He's smarter than that. He wouldn't have run out into traffic. He would have run to the end of the street and stopped. And there's me screaming at him in the middle of the street. In some ways, him having the freedom to sort of run around and he's very responsible. It's better for him that I'm not around all the time, sort of, poking at him and messing with him and telling him to stop. I mean, he needs to have that freedom and he makes good decisions and I trust him. But again, I'm sort of a killjoy sometimes. And so I think giving kids kind of that freedom to roam around their neighborhoods. If you live in a good area, you trust, and your children know some of the neighbors, if they get scared, they can run to someone's house. I mean, we also have to encourage that, running to someone's house and knocking on the door and saying, I need help. Like, this whole, we've kind of gotten into this habit of telling kids never talk to anybody. Mm-hmm. Lenore talks about this. Her son, he asked for help to get a subway token. He's 8 years old. That was a scandal that her son asked for help, but we need to encourage kids to ask adults for help.
Absolutely. But, the one point that I might note is that you talk about, if you live in a nice neighborhood. You remember that piece of the Washington Post that came out a couple of months ago talking about free-range parents and how actually free-range parents in some of the poorer neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. are more prevalent because They don't have another option. It's not a parenting choice.
It's only in Whole Foods neighborhoods that we call it free range parenting. In a whole lot of neighborhoods, it used to be called latchkey kids, right? Or it used to be called, mom has to go to work. You got to
Right.
stay.
I was a latchkey kid
Right.
after my parents got divorced because my mom was a working mom, and
Same with my husband.
got home and I was by myself for a
Yep.
few hours, and during the summer I occupied myself
Warming up those
you know.
Tostino pizza rolls. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, those were so good. So good. Riding my mongoose bike around for like 5 hours at a time. It was fantastic. But as you say, it was just parenting. That wasn't my mom, making this choice. That was, here's what I have to do.
Right.
Right.
I'm lucky I get to make this choice.
So absolutely. All right, listen, unfortunately, we've got to run, but thank you for coming in studio. IWF.org. Again, that's where folks can find out more information about the Women Lead Conference.
Yeah.
You do not have to be a independent woman to attend.
You do not. You don't have to be a woman. You don't have to be independent. You can.
Okay.
Yeah. And you don't even, it's obviously easier if you're from the DC area, but anybody can come.
All right. Well, there you go. June the 2nd. Julie, thank you so much. And thanks for bringing the little gun locks with you as well.
Thanks for having them. Thanks, Cameron.
Bye. All right.
Julie, I was just asked, which son is this? The first one? I was just asked if we had anything to eat back here.
Oh, boy.
I believe it looks like he found the supply of raw sugar cane that you all keep back there in the corner. Sorry about that. We just leave that for the kids.
That's
And,
great. That's great. That's great.
Can we give them a couple of shots of espresso, too, before we
And
give
mommy,
them back
a shot of vodka. Okay, there we go.